Hi, I'm Kathy Kellenberger. I'm a senior consultant with Pragmatic Works, and there's some of my contact information. And I'd like to let you know that later today or later this week, I will post the slides and the code on my blog, along with any answers to questions that you might have. I always do this, especially if we don't have time at the end. So I just alluded to a question about some people may have some experience using some of the window functions and not actually realize it. And I didn't realize I was using what I knew I was using this functionality, but I didn't know it was called window function until about 2 years ago. So the reason this whole talk came about is because I always do a session on the new T-SQL features when a new version of SQL Server comes out. And whenever I had the 2012 version and I started talking about the improvements and new window functions, I would see a lot of eyes glaze over, and I realized that there were many folks out there who had not really, did not really have the background in what had come before to understand the new functionality. So that's why I created this particular session, and I was lucky enough that it was chosen for the past summit in 2013, back in October. So I was pretty excited about that. So anyway, window function has nothing to do with the Windows operating system, and that's a big kind of myth out there. This is actually part of the ANSI standard, the standards boards that define what the SQL language should be, and then all the vendors like Microsoft and Oracle, and they use those standards to create their own language. Obviously they don't always follow the standards perfectly, or they come up with their own new things, but in this case this is actually standards that are out there and Microsoft has followed them. So let's figure out just what these window functions really are. So in 2005, window functions were introduced. And what I'm talking about there is row number and rank and dense rank. And many of you have probably think you have no experience using window functions, but yet you use row number. But then I bet there's also another group of you out there that maybe have heard of row number and never used it, never have taken the time to actually know what it's about, or maybe you've never heard of it at all. So that's another reason for this. I want to make sure that folks out there know some of the cool things that could be helping them today. Forget about upgrading. Don't forget about upgrading, but even if you're not going to be upgrading anytime soon, there's a lot of T-SQL functionality that you may be missing out on because you haven't heard of it. So in 2012, there's a big jump there. Microsoft did not do anything with window functions, any kind of enhancements or improvements until 2012. And in 2012, we have quite a bit added. I'll talk about what all those things are as we get to them. So what's going to happen in this session is that at one point I'm going to tell you, now we draw the line in the sand. We're going to talk about pre-2012 functionality, then I'm going to get to a certain point, and then everything from that forward is going to be 2012 functionality. I've given this presentation at quite a few SQL Saturday events and user groups, and I always have people come up to me after the session and say, we've got to get 2012 in-house, and I'm going to start working on that on Monday. So there's some really cool things. There is, it's hard to find information, really helpful information about this topic. I feel like I've been an evangelist on this particular topic. There is one really great book by Itzik Ben-Gan. It's a skinny book, but it's got a lot of great material, and I've learned a whole lot from it, and I'm constantly learning new things, so be sure to check that out as well. So we're going to talk about what the window functions are, and I've already given you a hint, at least with the 2005. First we've got ranking functions and aggregate functions that were added in 2005, and then we jumped to 2012. We've got some enhancements, plus we also have some new analytical functions that are pretty cool. So what are window functions? So think of this. This is conceptually, it's not actually what happens under the covers, but just imagine that you have this data, the results of a query that's just about to be returned to the end user. That's not how it really works. SQL Server starts returning results right away. It doesn't wait till everything's in place. But just this kind of helps me understand this, and maybe it'll help you as well. I have this data I'm looking at, and I'm looking at it through a window. And I would like to perform some kind of a calculation over the entire result set. And that's really what we're talking about. Conceptually, that's how you can think of it. In reality, what happens is that SQL Server will create work tables to help it do the calculations. It doesn't hold that result set in place, perform the calculations, and send it. But I kind of like that as a way to help me think about what the window means. So the window is actually a set of data. And I specify how, just what that window is with the over clause. So if you've seen an over clause in queries, chances are that was a window function. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's unfortunate or not, but Microsoft also uses the over clause for some other things, like the new paging, and the other one is the sequence object. So Microsoft is using the over clause for more things than just window functions, but window functions always have an over clause. So if you see an over clause, it's probably a window function. Window functions can only be in the select and order by clause. That's really, really important, because the other clauses, for example, from, where, group by, having, operate before the window functions do their job.